Asher Caldwell often told himself he had won the lottery of life. At 34, he had a career he genuinely enjoyed, a house that felt like a sanctuary rather than a prison, and, most of all, a wife who seemed to embody every dream he had ever carried in his heart. Vivian wasn't just beautiful in a way that turned heads on the street, she had an energy about her, a glow that made every room she walked into feel brighter. The two of them had met nearly a decade ago at a charity gala neither of them had wanted to attend. He remembered standing by the bar, awkwardly loosening his tie, when she approached with a teasing smile and said, "You look like a man planning his escape." That one line had broken through his shell, and from that moment forward, he was captivated. Years later, Asher could still recall every detail of their wedding. Vivian had walked down the aisle in a gown that shimmered under the soft glow of the chandeliers, her eyes locked on his as though no one else existed in the world. The vows they exchanged weren't the flowery kind written for performance, they were raw and personal. He had promised to be her safe place. She had promised to never let his heart grow lonely. For a long time, those promises seemed unshakable. Their friends often joked that Asher and Vivian were the Caldwells, spoken almost like a brand, a couple others wanted to model themselves after. Dinner parties at their home were full of laughter and warmth, Vivian moving with effortless grace as she hosted, Asher smiling proudly at her side. Even strangers noticed the way he looked at her, like a man perpetually in awe of his own good fortune. Their life together was stitched with little rituals that made each day feel special. On Sunday mornings, they would walk to the corner cafe, share a cinnamon roll, and argue playfully about who deserved the last bite. On weekday evenings, Asher would come home to the smell of Vivian's favorite candles and her soft humming as she cooked. He would slip his arms around her waist, rest his chin on her shoulder, and whisper something that made her laugh. It wasn't perfect, of course, no marriage ever was, but to Asher, it felt close enough. Arguments about bills or late nights at work always ended in apologies, in reconciliation. He trusted Vivian the way a sailor trusts the stars, completely, without question. She was his compass, his home. And Vivian seemed just as devoted. She left him notes tucked into his briefcase, little reminders scrawled in looping handwriting, "You've got this, love," or "Dinner with your favorite tonight, me." On their anniversaries, she always found ways to surprise him, sometimes with grand gestures, sometimes with quiet intimacy. For their 5th, she recreated their first date down to the exact wine they had shared. Asher believed, with every fiber of his being, that what they had was rare. Special. Unbreakable. When friends confided in him about fights or infidelity, he felt sympathy but never fear. That could never be Vivian. She wasn't just his wife, she was his partner, his confidant, his best friend. If anything ever troubled her, she would come to him. That was the bond they had built, wasn't it? That night, as he sat on their porch with a glass of bourbon in hand, Asher watched Vivian through the kitchen window. She was laughing on the phone with her sister, her hair tucked behind her ear, her whole face alight with joy. A wave of warmth swept over him, and he thought, how did I get so lucky? He didn't know then that life had a way of turning blessings into illusions, of shifting the ground beneath your feet just when you felt safest. He didn't know that the love he clung to so tightly would soon unravel, strand by strand, until all that remained were questions and shattered trust. But in that moment, in the calm before the storm, Asher Caldwell believed he was exactly where he was meant to be. And that belief, that unshakable trust, would make the coming betrayal cut all the deeper. It was a Friday evening when Asher's past walked back into his present. He had just wrapped up a long week of negotiations at the firm and was settling into the leather armchair in his office when an unfamiliar number lit up his phone. Normally, he would have ignored it, but something compelled him to swipe. "Asher Caldwell," he answered, his voice weary but polite. "Asher. Damn, it's been a lifetime." The voice was warm, confident, threaded with a charm that hadn't aged a day. "It's Noah. Noah Whitford." For a second, Asher's mind scrambled. The name echoed like a bell ringing from another decade. Then it hit him, Noah. His college roommate, his partner in crime during endless nights of cheap pizza and bad beer, the friend who had once felt like a brother. They hadn't spoken in nearly 12 years. "Noah?" Asher said, smiling despite his exhaustion. "I'll be damned. Where the hell have you been?" "Everywhere," Noah laughed. "But finally back in the States for good. Look, I'd love to catch up. Dinner? Drinks? You name it." Asher hesitated for only a moment. Life had pulled them in different directions, he into law, Noah into business ventures scattered across Europe and Asia. But there was no bad blood, no unresolved tension. Just time, and the silent drift that comes with it. "Yeah," Asher said finally. "Yeah, let's do it." When he told Vivian that night, her eyes lit up. "Noah Whitford? The Noah Whitford? I've heard so many stories about him." Asher chuckled. "Careful. Most of them make me look like an idiot." Vivian leaned against the counter, curiosity sparkling in her gaze. "I can't wait to meet him. It'll be good for you, Ash. You never reconnect with old friends." That Sunday, the three of them met at a trendy new bistro downtown. Asher spotted Noah first, impossibly well-dressed, a tailored navy suit that seemed to belong on the cover of a magazine rather than in a restaurant full of noise and clinking glasses. His hair, streaked with just enough gray to suggest gravitas, was styled with effortless precision. "Asher Caldwell." Noah boomed, striding forward to clasp him in a hug that smelled faintly of expensive cologne. "You look good, brother. Domestic life suits you." Asher grinned, patting his back. "And you, Jesus, Noah, you look like you own this place." Noah laughed, a deep, confident sound that turned heads. Then his eyes shifted to Vivian, and for a split second, Asher saw something flicker there, interest, admiration, maybe just surprise at her beauty. "And you must be Vivian," Noah said, taking her hand with an easy charm. "I've heard more about you than you'd believe. Though none of it does you justice." Vivian blushed faintly, offering her hand. "Flattery already? You and Asher really were friends." The night unfolded in a blur of stories and laughter. Noah regaled them with tales of Shanghai rooftops, Paris business deals, late nights in Dubai. He was larger than life, his voice commanding, his presence magnetic. Vivian was enthralled, leaning in, her laughter ringing like silver bells. Asher felt a pang of nostalgia. This was the Noah he remembered, the man who could make a room spin with his energy. Sitting there with Vivian glowing beside him, Asher felt a rare completeness, like two halves of his life had just clicked together. Yet as the night wore on, subtle things tugged at his awareness. The way Noah's gaze lingered just a moment too long on Vivian when she spoke. The way Vivian seemed to hang on his every word, her smile softer, warmer. It was nothing, Asher told himself. Vivian was naturally warm, naturally curious. Noah was charismatic by default. There was no reason to be uneasy. Still, when Noah suggested they meet again soon, just the three of them, Asher felt an odd weight in his chest. He brushed it aside, smiling as he agreed. After all, it was good to have an old friend back. Driving home, Vivian was animated, her cheeks flushed. "He's incredible," she said. "So driven, so worldly. I can see why you admired him so much." Asher kept his eyes on the road, nodding. "Yeah. That was Noah. Always 10 steps ahead." Vivian reached over, squeezing his hand. "I think it's wonderful he's back. It's good for you, Ash. You deserve more people who care about you." He smiled faintly, her words soothing the unease that lingered in the back of his mind. But later that night, as Vivian brushed her hair in front of the mirror, Asher caught her humming a tune she hadn't sung in years, a tune Noah used to play on his guitar in their dorm room. It was probably nothing. Probably just coincidence. Still, Asher lay awake longer than usual, staring at the ceiling, replaying Noah's voice, Vivian's laughter, and the way the two had seemed to orbit each other across the table. The old friend had returned. And with him, a shadow Asher couldn't yet name. At first, Asher told himself it was just the natural excitement of reconnecting with an old friend. Noah had always had that effect on people, magnetic, unforgettable. But as the weeks passed, Asher began noticing things he couldn't quite shake. It started small. Vivian's phone, once left casually on the kitchen counter, was now always tucked away in her purse or flipped face down on the table. When it buzzed, she'd check it quickly, her lips curving in a faint smile before she set it aside. Asher asked once, playfully, "Who's got you grinning like that?" She laughed, brushing his arm. "Evelyn from the office. She sends me memes all day. You wouldn't get half of them." He chuckled, believing her. Evelyn was one of her closest colleagues, after all. But something about the way Vivian avoided his eyes lingered in the back of his mind. Then came the late nights. Vivian, who had always been meticulous about their evening routines, began claiming last-minute projects at work. "It's quarter end," she explained one Thursday as she slid on her heels. "I'll be home late. Don't wait up." Asher nodded, trusting her. But when she returned past midnight, hair slightly tousled, perfume stronger than usual, he couldn't ignore the unease that prickled at his skin. She kissed his cheek, whispered, "Sorry, love," and slipped into the shower. The next morning, her laughter over breakfast was so genuine, so effortless, that Asher almost felt guilty for doubting her. Almost. One Saturday, the three of them, Asher, Vivian, and Noah, met again, this time at a jazz lounge downtown. Noah was dazzling as always, spinning stories of business negotiations in Rome and nights on the Amalfi Coast. Vivian leaned forward, chin propped on her hand, eyes sparkling in a way Asher hadn't seen in years. Asher watched silently, a strange tightness in his chest. He tried to join in, to steer the conversation toward his and Vivian's shared memories, but it felt like he was orbiting a planet that had already formed its own gravitational pull. Later, when Noah excused himself to take a call, Asher leaned close to Vivian. "You really light up around him," he teased lightly, forcing a smile. Vivian blinked, caught off guard, then laughed. "He's just fascinating, Ash. Don't tell me you're jealous." "I'm not," Asher said quickly. "Just noticing." She squeezed his hand. "You have nothing to worry about. You're my everything. Always." Her words soothed him in the moment, but as the weeks unfolded, the signs multiplied. He found a receipt for an expensive bottle of wine tucked into her handbag, a brand they had never bought before, from a restaurant he knew she hadn't visited with him. One evening, while folding laundry, he noticed a faint scent on her blouse. Not his cologne. Not hers either. Something distinctly different, woodsy, sharp. A scent he recognized from Noah's embrace. Asher's stomach tightened, but he said nothing. Instead, he replayed moments in his head, searching for cracks in the picture-perfect life they had built. Vivian was still affectionate, still slipped notes into his briefcase, still laughed at his dry jokes. Yet there was something in her eyes now, something distant, as if part of her lived in another world he couldn't reach. One night, after Vivian fell asleep, Asher lay awake beside her, staring at the ceiling. He thought about the vows they had exchanged all those years ago, the promises of honesty, of never letting each other's hearts grow lonely. He had lived by those vows. He believed she had, too. But doubt had crept in like a shadow, and once it was there, it refused to leave. The turning point came on a quiet Wednesday. Asher had left work early, planning to surprise Vivian with dinner. He set the table, uncorked her favorite wine, and lit candles around the dining room. But when he called her cell, she didn't answer. An hour passed. Then another. Finally, near midnight, she walked through the door, hair damp as though from a hurried shower, her smile practiced but not quite real. "Long day?" he asked gently. "The longest," she sighed, slipping off her heels. "Sorry, I should have called." He nodded, studying her face. There was a softness there, but not for him. Not anymore. Asher didn't confront her, not yet. Instead, he cleaned up the untouched dinner after she fell asleep, his movements slow, deliberate. Each dish he stacked felt like another brick in the growing wall between them. In the quiet of that night, Asher admitted something he hadn't dared before: the woman he trusted most was slipping away from him. And for the first time, he wondered if she might not just be slipping, she might already be gone. Autumn had settled over the city, the trees outside painted in amber and rust, when Noah invited the Caldwells to a charity gala. "Black tie, the works," he said with his trademark grin. "It'll be just like the old days, Ash. Only this time, we'll drink better wine." Asher wasn't particularly fond of galas, but Vivian lit up at the invitation. She loved the gowns, the glittering lights, the orchestra filling a grand hall with sound. Watching her twirl in front of the mirror in a silver dress that hugged her frame, Asher felt the same rush he'd experienced on their wedding day. She was radiant. She was his. Or at least, she had been. The gala was held at an old theater converted into a ballroom, chandeliers hanging like constellations above the crowd. The room pulsed with conversation, laughter, and the clink of champagne flutes. Asher kept close to Vivian, his arm around her waist, proud to show her off. Then Noah arrived. He swept in with the confidence of a man who belonged anywhere he chose to stand. His tuxedo was cut to perfection, his smile broad, his eyes sharp. Women turned their heads. Men nodded with respect. Noah had always carried that aura, but tonight it seemed magnified, as though the whole evening bent itself around him. Vivian noticed too. Asher felt it in the subtle shift of her body, the way she straightened when Noah approached, her smile blooming brighter than the one she'd worn all night. "Noah," she greeted, her voice warm. "Vivian," he said, taking her hand and pressing his lips to the back of it. His eyes lingered a heartbeat too long. Asher forced a smile, trying to ignore the spark of irritation that flared in his chest. "Glad you made it," he said. "Wouldn't miss it," Noah replied easily, clapping him on the shoulder. "You've still got the best taste in company." They moved through the night as a trio, mingling with donors and old acquaintances. But the longer it went on, the more Asher felt like an outsider in his own marriage. He'd glance over and see Vivian laughing at something Noah whispered, her hand brushing his arm in a way that seemed casual, too casual. He caught Noah's gaze once, the man's eyes glinting with something unreadable, before he looked away. It was during the dinner service that the moment came. The three of them sat at a round table, candles flickering in crystal holders. Conversation flowed around them, but Asher's attention sharpened to a single thread. Noah leaned in, saying something Asher didn't catch, and Vivian laughed softly, her eyes locking with his. It wasn't just laughter, it was intimacy, a private language exchanged in the space of a glance. For Asher, the room fell away. The clinking glasses, the violins, the chatter, all of it blurred. He saw only that look, that flash of connection, and it sliced through him like glass. He tried to shake it off. Maybe he was overreacting. Maybe he was seeing things because doubt had already poisoned his thoughts. Vivian was his wife. Noah was his friend. He needed to believe that. But then, as the evening wound down, Asher excused himself briefly to take a call from a client. When he returned, he caught sight of them across the room, Vivian and Noah, standing closer than necessary, her head tilted toward him, his hand lightly touching the small of her back. It was subtle. Innocent, even, to anyone who didn't know better. But Asher knew Vivian. He knew her body language, her tells, her every unspoken gesture. And what he saw in that moment wasn't friendship. It was something else. The drive home was quiet. Vivian hummed softly, staring out the window, while Asher's knuckles whitened on the steering wheel. Words pressed against his lips, desperate to spill out, but he bit them back. If he confronted her now, she'd only deny it. He had no proof, just a collection of moments that haunted him. At home, Vivian kissed him lightly, whispering, "Thank you for tonight. I had such a wonderful time." Asher nodded, forcing a smile. "Me too." But long after she had drifted into sleep, Asher sat in the dark living room, the echoes of the gala swirling in his mind. Her laughter. Noah's hand. That shared glance. The image replayed again and again until it carved itself into him. For the first time, Asher allowed himself to think the unthinkable: maybe his perfect marriage wasn't so perfect anymore. And maybe, just maybe, the man he once called brother had become something else entirely, a rival hiding in plain sight. The weeks that followed were like walking through fog for Marcus. He tried to brush off his suspicions, telling himself he was imagining things, but the signs kept multiplying. Amelia, once warm and affectionate, had grown distant. She lingered longer at work, claiming late-night deadlines and weekend conferences. Marcus wanted to believe her, but the inconsistencies gnawed at him. Her perfume would sometimes cling to her clothes in ways that didn't match her story. There were hushed phone calls she ended quickly when he entered the room, followed by awkward silence. At home, the little rituals that once bound them together began to fade. Dinners grew quiet, replaced by Amelia scrolling on her phone while Marcus stared at his untouched plate. She avoided his gaze, her smile forced, her laughter brittle. The house they had built together began to feel hollow. One night, unable to contain his unease, Marcus tried to reach out. "Amelia, are you happy with us? With me?" His voice cracked under the weight of the question. Amelia didn't answer right away. Her eyes flickered, her lips parted as though she might confess something, but instead, she forced a small smile. "Of course I am, Marcus. I'm just tired. Work is draining me." But Marcus could feel it, the truth was slipping through her silence. He lay awake that night, staring at the ceiling, the sound of her steady breathing beside him both comforting and tormenting. He wanted to hold her, to believe her, but the distance between them felt like a canyon widening by the day. Marcus's friends noticed too. One evening at a bar, his longtime buddy Trevor leaned across the table. "You look wrecked, man. What's going on?" Marcus hesitated, then finally admitted, "I think something's wrong with Amelia. I don't know if I'm losing her, or if I already have." Trevor's face darkened with concern. "You need to know the truth. Don't let this eat you alive." Those words settled into Marcus's mind. The truth. He wanted it desperately, but he feared what it might destroy. Inside him, the cracks deepened, threatening to shatter the life he had once thought unbreakable. Marcus's unease soon turned into quiet vigilance. He wasn't a man prone to jealousy or suspicion, but the changes in Amelia were undeniable. She had begun guarding her phone like a secret treasure. The device, once casually left on the nightstand, now followed her everywhere, even into the bathroom. Notifications would light up the screen, and Marcus would catch the faint reflection of a smile tugging at her lips, one that hadn't been directed at him in months. One Saturday morning, Amelia claimed she had a last-minute meeting. She kissed Marcus on the cheek and left in a rush, her heels clicking on the hardwood floor. Something inside him resisted letting the moment pass. For the first time, he decided to follow. Marcus kept a careful distance as he trailed Amelia's car through the streets of Charlotte. His heart hammered with every turn, every stoplight. He prayed he was wrong, that she was going to her office, that his doubts were just the ghosts of insecurity whispering lies. But when Amelia pulled into the parking lot of a boutique hotel, Marcus's stomach dropped. He watched as a tall, sharply dressed man emerged from the entrance, his confident smile lighting up Amelia's face in a way Marcus hadn't seen in years. She laughed, genuine, unguarded laughter, as the man touched her hand, leading her inside. Marcus's hands tightened around the steering wheel, knuckles white, breath shallow. His world tilted. Every memory, every promise they had made, suddenly felt fragile and false. He didn't storm inside. He didn't confront her, not yet. Instead, He sat in the car, staring at the glass doors of the hotel, fighting the urge to break down. His chest ached, his mind screamed, but his body was frozen. After what felt like an eternity, he drove away. The streets blurred, his vision clouded with tears he refused to let fall. That night, Amelia returned home with a practiced smile. "How was your day?" she asked lightly, setting her bag down. Marcus studied her face, every detail, her lipstick slightly smudged, the faint scent of cologne that wasn't hers. He forced a smile, his voice calm though his soul trembled. "Fine," he said. "Just fine." Inside, however, the whispers had become truth. And truth was heavier than he had ever imagined. Cable. Marcus knew he couldn't live in the haze of doubt any longer. The hotel scene replayed in his mind like a cruel film strip, but he needed more than a glimpse, he needed certainty. Confronting Amelia without proof would only invite denial, excuses, maybe even manipulation. He had to be sure. So, quietly, Marcus became a detective in his own home. He noticed the way Amelia's phone never left her side. One evening while she showered, he mustered the courage to glance at it, only to find it locked with a new passcode. His chest tightened. She had never needed one before. Her credit card statements, once left casually in the mail basket, were now tucked away in her office drawer. Marcus found them anyway. Charges from restaurants he had never been to, hotel bars he had never stepped foot in. They whispered stories she hadn't told. And then, there were the absences. Nights when Amelia claimed, client dinners, or emergency meetings. Marcus drove past her office on one of those nights, dark and deserted. His grip on the steering wheel turned iron hard. Still, he didn't confront her. Not yet. He watched, collected, and endured the slow erosion of trust. Trevor, seeing the toll it was taking, urged him to act. "Man, this is eating you alive. You don't deserve this. She's already broken the vows. What more do you need?" But Marcus wasn't ready. He wasn't sure if it was fear of the truth, or fear of what came after the truth. He had built his entire life with Amelia, their home, their dreams, their future. To accept her betrayal meant watching it all crumble. Late one night, as Amelia slept soundly beside him, Marcus lay awake staring at the ceiling. The woman he had once believed was his forever was now a stranger he barely recognized. And in that silence, he promised himself, the next lie she told would be her last. It happened on a Thursday evening. Marcus had come home early, hoping, desperately, to surprise Amelia with dinner and maybe find a trace of the woman he once knew. He lit candles, cooked her favorite pasta, and waited at the table. But the minutes stretched into hours. The food grew cold, the candles melted into stubs. Amelia's texts went unanswered. At 10:43 p.m., the front door finally opened. Amelia slipped inside, her hair tousled, makeup faintly smeared, and the faint scent of a man's cologne clinging to her clothes. She froze when she saw the untouched dinner, the empty wine glasses waiting. Marcus's voice was steady, but his eyes burned. "Where were you?" She blinked, hesitated for a heartbeat too long, then forced a smile. "Work ran late. I told you, big project this week." Marcus rose from the table slowly, his hands clenched at his sides. "Don't lie to me, Amelia. I drove past your office tonight. It was dark." The color drained from her face. For a moment, silence hung between them, heavy and suffocating. Then her jaw tightened, and she crossed her arms. "You're spying on me now," she snapped, her voice sharp with deflection. "Spying?" Marcus's voice cracked with restrained fury. "I'm fighting for the truth in my own marriage. I saw you at the hotel, Amelia. With him." Her lips parted, a flicker of panic crossing her features before she masked it with cold composure. "You don't understand," she whispered. Marcus's chest heaved. "Then make me understand. Who is he? How long has this been going on?" But Amelia said nothing. Her silence was louder than any confession. The weight of it broke something inside Marcus. His hands trembled, his vision blurred. The woman he had loved, trusted, built a future with, was gone. Finally, his voice came low, hoarse, almost pleading. "Why, Amelia? Why wasn't I enough?" Her eyes glistened, but no words came. And in that moment, Marcus realized the truth he had feared all along: he had lost her long before this night. The silence pressed down on them like a storm waiting to break. Marcus stood there, every muscle tight, while Amelia avoided his eyes. Finally, she sank into a chair, her hands trembling as she pressed them to her face. "It wasn't supposed to happen this way," she whispered, her voice cracking. Marcus's chest tightened. "Then tell me how it happened." Her shoulders slumped, as though the weight of months, maybe years, had finally crushed her. "His name is Daniel," she began, her voice barely audible. "He's a client. It started as dinners, work trips. I told myself it was harmless, that it didn't mean anything. But then," she broke off, tears streaking her cheeks. "I felt alive again, Marcus. I felt seen." The words sliced through him like glass. Alive again. Seen. As if his love, his devotion, his years of loyalty had been invisible. "How long?" he demanded, his voice low, dangerous. Amelia's silence said more than words could. Finally, she whispered, "Almost a year." Marcus staggered back as though she had struck him. A year. While he had been planning their future, she had been building a parallel world behind his back. "You let me love you," he said, his voice trembling. "You let me believe we still had something worth fighting for, all while you were giving yourself to someone else." Amelia sobbed openly now, reaching for him. "I didn't want to hurt you. I didn't want to lose everything we had. I was confused." Marcus pulled away from her touch like it burned. "Confused?" He laughed bitterly, the sound hollow. "No. You made a choice. Over and over again. Every time you lied, every time you walked out that door, you chose him." For the first time, Amelia didn't fight back. She lowered her head, broken, knowing there was nothing left to say. And in that moment, Marcus felt something inside him harden. The love that had carried him through years of devotion and sacrifice was gone, replaced by a hollow ache. The truth was no longer a shadow, it was a wrecking ball, and it had demolished everything they had built together. Marcus didn't storm out that night. He didn't throw things or shout. Instead, he stood in the wreckage of their marriage, staring at the woman who had once been his entire world, and felt empty. Without another word, he turned and walked upstairs. He packed a single bag, just clothes, nothing sentimental, and left the house in silence. The slam of the front door echoed like a final verdict. He drove with no destination, the city lights blurring through his tears. Hours later, Marcus found himself parked at the edge of a quiet overlook, the skyline glowing in the distance. He sat there until dawn, replaying Amelia's confession, the lies, the laughter she had shared with someone else. The next morning, Marcus returned to the house only long enough to gather more essentials. Amelia was at the kitchen table, her face pale, her eyes swollen from crying. She tried to speak, but Marcus held up a hand. "Don't," he said, his voice cold, final. "I don't want excuses. I don't want apologies. I just want space." For days, Marcus stayed at Trevor's place. His friend offered beer, a couch, and quiet companionship. "You're stronger than you think," Trevor told him one night. "She may have broken you, but she doesn't define you." Still, the ache lingered. The memories of Amelia's laughter, the feel of her hand in his, the plans they had made, all of it haunted him. Nights were the hardest. He'd lie awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering how love so deep could rot away into betrayal. Amelia texted him, called him, even showed up at Trevor's door once, begging for a chance to explain. Marcus couldn't face her. Not yet. Maybe not ever. Because in the hollow quiet of betrayal, Marcus had begun to see the truth: he could never go back. Even if he forgave her, even if she begged on her knees, the trust that once bound them was gone, burned to ash. And for the first time, Marcus began to wonder, not about Amelia, not about what they had lost, but about what came next for him. Amelia refused to let go easily. A week after Marcus had left, she appeared outside Trevor's apartment, her eyes red, her voice raw from crying. "Marcus, please," she begged when he opened the door. "Don't shut me out like this. I made a mistake, but I still love you. We can fix this." Marcus stared at her, torn between the pull of old memories and the weight of fresh scars. His jaw tightened. "Love?" he echoed bitterly. "You loved me while you were in his bed?" Her tears fell harder. "I ended it with Daniel. He means nothing to me. It was a mistake, a terrible, selfish mistake. But what we have, it's worth saving." Trevor stood behind Marcus, arms crossed, his eyes full of disdain for Amelia. "You had your chance," he muttered. Marcus stepped outside, closing the door behind him to keep Trevor from interfering. For a long moment, he just looked at her, the woman he once thought was his forever. He saw her pain, her desperation, but he also saw the choices she had made, the lies she had told, the trust she had shattered. "I wanted to grow old with you, Amelia," Marcus said softly, his voice breaking. "But the person I loved doesn't exist anymore. You killed us the moment you chose him." Amelia reached for his hand, but he pulled away. "I'll do anything," she whispered. "Therapy, counseling, whatever it takes. Just don't give up on us." Marcus shook his head, his eyes glistening but resolute. "You gave up first." With that, he turned and walked back inside, leaving her standing in the hallway, sobbing into the silence. That night, Marcus sat alone on the couch, staring at the ceiling. He felt the weight of loss, yes, but beneath it, for the first time, there was something else. A spark. A sense of freedom. The faintest glimpse of a future where he could rebuild, stronger than before. And though it hurt like hell, Marcus knew he had finally taken the first step forward. Months passed. The pain didn't vanish overnight, but it dulled, reshaped into something Marcus could carry without breaking. Therapy helped. Long talks with Trevor helped. But most of all, the quiet moments alone, the walks at sunrise, the journals filled with his raw thoughts, the rediscovery of hobbies he had long abandoned, these slowly rebuilt him. The house he once shared with Amelia was sold. Marcus bought a small loft downtown, nothing extravagant, but it was his. Every corner reflected his choices, his healing, his freedom. One evening, while attending a local art exhibit, something he never would have done before, Marcus struck up a conversation with a woman named Lila. She was vibrant, thoughtful, with a laugh that felt genuine, not borrowed or forced. They talked for hours, not as two people rushing into romance, but as strangers discovering shared sparks of humanity. Marcus didn't fall in love that night, but he felt something he hadn't in a long time: possibility. Back at his loft, he stood on the balcony, city lights shimmering below. He thought of Amelia, not with rage, not with longing, but with acceptance. She had been a chapter of his life, both beautiful and devastating. But she was not the whole book. Marcus lifted a glass of whiskey, toasting the night sky. "To new beginnings," he whispered. And for the first time since his world had collapsed, Marcus didn't feel broken. He felt free.